Folks, just recently, you can stay in here, Steph.
Okay.
Just recently, the Obama administration announces nationwide Muslim outreach program for children grades K through 12. Well, I do want to point out one thing here before we start rolling on this. I've said for a long time, friends, and again, I hate saying this, but I told you so. I've told you time and time and time again, listen, the bloggers, they're too blind. I could transport these people to the sun and they wouldn't see it, friends. That's how tightly that they have their eyes shut on purpose. But I've said for years that the homosexual agenda, the radicals are being used as a political battering ram to upend the Constitution of the United States. As did I say, secondly, that right behind the homosexual agenda, for example, the NEA, Homosexual Caucus wasn't good enough. NEA, National Education Association, now has a drag queen caucus in New York City. They're actually teaching them bestiality. I can go on and on. A different show, friends, different topic. But I have said for a long time, what is right behind the homosexual agenda? I have said time and time again, the Muslims are right behind the radical homosexuals, attempting to implement Sharia law right behind them. So before you show sympathy to the radical homosexuals who could care less as to what's behind them, you might want to open your eyes up, friends, and understand that, listen, Sons of Liberty Radio, Bradley Dean, I was right, friends. Because the Obama administration announces a nationwide Muslim outreach program for children grades kindergarten through the 12th grade. Now, if we'd have just simply went to Scripture, we could have found out to our own demise as to what's going on here, because the Lord already warned us. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, this president, which thou shalt set over thee, that you tolerate America, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there thou shalt serve other gods, Deuteronomy 28, verse 36, namely their gods. Okay? This last week, during a press conference, America's self-proclaimed Christian president, Barack Hussein Obama, thought it his duty to begin the illegal implementation of the Muslim religion as a school curriculum from kindergarten to the 12th grade. By the way, illegally implementing. Read Article 10 of the Bill of Rights. Government has no business in the educational scheme whatsoever. And by the way, friends, this is to begin February 14th, 2014. I go on. President Barack Hussein Obama spoke with reporters to explain why it was so important that these outreach programs exist. Listen carefully. The Muslim community deserves our full understanding and respect, said the Muslim in chief. Listen again. The Muslim community, said this president, deserves our full understanding and respect. We have killed millions of Muslims, he said, overseas since the September 11th attacks. Okay? It was also this government, keep in mind, that called forth the war to attack Iraq, who had nothing to do with what took place supposedly on September 11th in New York City. Keep that in mind. These folks are not all bad, said the president, speaking of the radical Muslims. In fact, most of them are hardworking citizens just like you and me. There is truth in that nugget, by the way. I don't believe all Muslims are radical Muslims, jihadists. He goes on, I encourage every student in America to participate in your school's Muslim outreach program. Learn about the Muslim community, the beauty of Sunnah, and the magic of the Quran. Really, the magic of the Quran. Now we're supposed to love those that supposedly attacked us on September 11th. So much we're to embrace them as to indoctrinate our children with the Muslim religion, like it or not. Oh, Bradley, that's too far. No, friends. This is a federal government's educational indoctrination scheme. They are implementing it by taking your tax dollars and throwing it down on kids in public schools, like it or not. I didn't know that that was government's purpose. But let's get back to this again, friends. The magic of the Quran, Mr. President? Really, the magic of Quran. You mean like learn to become a Muslim? That's right. That's exactly what he's saying. Learn Ramadan, which is a special month of the year for over 1 billion Muslims throughout the world, which means, Ramadan does, it is a time for inner reflection, devotion to Allah, and self-control. Learn the 5 pillars of Islam. You mean like that? Is that the magic that you're talking about, Mr. President? Why, yes, of course it is. You have 5 different versions of religious discipline in which the Muslims are actually to go through to celebrate, friends, the 5 pillars. I'm going to continue this discourse when I get back, friends. It gets better. Just rest assured it gets better. You got Bradley, sonsoflibertyradio.com. To the right of me, Stephanie Joy, sonsoflibertyradio.com. We'll be right back. 1-866-233-0747. Welcome back to the Sons of Liberty. 1-866-233-0747. Talking about the magic of the Quran, friends. As Muslim-in-Chief begins his implementation, which, by the way, starts February 14th of 2014, the implementation of the Muslim religion into public schools across the country from kindergarten all the way to the 12th grade. So let's talk about the magic of the Quran that Mr. Barack Hussein Obama is actually expressing here. Okay, the magic. Well, we're to learn to become a Muslim, saith they to your children. Learn Ramadan. Learn the 5 pillars of Islam, which is it's more of an adherence, a dedication to the religion of Islam. And then we go on to the 5 pillars. Then we talk about memorize the verses of the Quran. Folks, I'm speaking as if this is not already going on in public schools, but by the way, it is already. Another thing that they would like you to adopt is a Muslim name. And if that's not good enough, they want you to stage a jihad. This is what they want to teach kids in public schools across the country by force through the federal government. Stage a jihad. For those that do not know what a jihad is, it's war against non-Muslims. So I did a little homework, and I just wanted to go to a modern version of a dictionary to actually see the definition of the word jihad. So I went to the Merriam-Webster. Jihad defines out, in Islam, the central doctrine that calls on believers to combat the enemies of their religion. The jihad of the sword involves waging war against enemies of Islam. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the concept of jihad has sometimes been used as an ideological weapon in the effort to combat Western influences and secular governments and to establish an ideal Islamic society. This was all found in the Merriam-Webster, friends. So apparently this is the magic that Barack Hussein Obama blatantly desires your children to learn. And interestingly enough, in recent years, American public schools have been indoctrinated with the Muslim religion. Studies have shown that over 500 historical errors in public school textbooks giving an Islamic slant to America's young. That would be your children, friends. How did this happen? The American Civil Liberties Union, the American Muslim Council, by the way, Abdul Rahman Alamoudi, today serves a 23-year prison sentence for being one of the top fundraisers of Al-Qaeda in the United States. Just overlook that, though, friends. Who else is involved in this little scheme? Americans United for Separation of Church and State. In other words, who's gathered themselves together against the Lord and His anointed?
Can I just bring up a point there? When you say that, that's what I was thinking. When you've been talking about this, I've been thinking, wait a second. I thought, according to the government, quote unquote, there are lines between church and state.
Well, yeah,
so how come it's okay?
You got to be careful of that, though, because then you begin to feed into them and make reference to their false status.
It's their false status, but that's what they always go by. Now, if I wanted to go, if I was a student in a public school and I wanted to, teach about Christ and I wanted to talk about creation in my science class,
you can.
All those good things, that's right. But for this implementation by the president, how come that doesn't? How come the ACLU is not? Yeah, it's ACLU is not all over that.
Let's be honest about it, because they know that the American people aren't going to do anything about it one way or another. And I'm talking about those that sit by and just expect other people to war and fight the good fight of faith. Well, they sit back and they watch TV and they go to the baseball games and the football games. They're too busy being entertained out of their freedoms. I mean, I'm just calling it for what it is, friends. Right? Okay. They know for the most part that they're going to do nothing about it. I mean, we've already had Fast and Furious. The American people at a it go. We've had Benghazi, the American people let it go. We have this president being busted for how many lies since he's been in office, and the American people let him go. So they encourage the administration to continue on in its lawlessness by allowing him to do what he does today.
That's right.
That's why. See, the difference is when people begin to take a stand, we can win the day. But until the American people come together, because for the most part, everybody's saying the same thing except that 1.6% of the population that the men are running from today in this country. And by the way, if they're not running from them, watching a football game or a baseball game, they're outside in Minnesota today, sitting on a little thin sheet of ice, actually with a little hole in the center, fishing for a little crappie to come up.
That's right.
That's where America's finest is right now. And again, if that does not fall to your lot, then praise God. That's probably why you listen to the Sons of Liberty Radio.com 6 days a week. But that is the reason they do what they do, is because the American people tolerate it. So now they are literally attempting to teach their children to war against the heritage of its own country.
And speaking of the heritage of our own country, if you look at Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, he said, "Let the children be carefully instructed in the principles and obligations of the Christian religion. This is the most essential part of education. The great enemy of the salvation of man, in my opinion, never invented a more effectual means of taking away Christianity from the world than by persuading mankind that it was improper to read the Bible at schools." He continued in the same letter to say, "The only foundation for a useful education in a republic, not a democracy, a republic, is to be laid in religion. Without this, there can be no virtue. Without virtue, there can be no liberty." So you think maybe he's trying to install this program to take away further liberties from our children?
Well, especially when they're attempting to teach children in K through 12 in the public education system in America to actually call for a jihad against the infidels. Infidels would be you, friends. If you don't believe in the doctrine of Muhammad, then you're an infidel. Remember what I just got done reading off to you, friends, is the very definition through Merriam-Webster. In Islam, the central doctrine that calls on believers of the Muslim religion to combat the enemies of their religion. Okay, the jihad of the sword involves waging war against the enemies of Islam. The definition goes on. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the concept of jihad has sometimes been used as an ideological weapon in the effort to combat America, Western influences in secular governments, and to establish an ideal Islamic society.
Yeah.
So this is the magic that Barack Hussein Obama is blatantly endorsing. And by the way, folks, it's not just a desire for him to teach your children. They're doing this by force. Okay? And interestingly enough, as I just shared with you, in America, in the American public schools, they've already been indoctrinated with the Muslim religion illegally. Because studies have shown that over 500 historical errors in public school textbooks giving an Islamic slant to your children. And then I named off the American Civil Liberties Union, the American Muslim Council, all in cahoots together in concert, along with Americans United for Separation of Church and State. I mean, friends, this is ridiculous. It's so bad that anybody with a little bit of understanding has got to ask the question, how are these people existing in a free nation like this? Because they don't have the freedom to violate our laws, friends. But I go on. Also, who went in concert along with, the ACLU and the American Muslim Council and the Americans United for Separation of Church and State is none other than yours truly, the Clinton administration. By the way, much of what surrounds this current administration joined together to create an environment that opened the door to Muslim teaching while attacking anyone who speaks of the Christian religion in public schools.
Yeah, that's
now, Christians, we're not asking for permission to obey God or our law now, are we? Let me give you let me give you an example.
For instance.
For instance. You like that?
I like that.
All right. For instance, a school in California is teaching their students a 3-week course that essentially requires them to become Muslims for that period of time. In addition, there are over 225 Muslim schools in the United States of America, and around 50,000 children who are being taught to, and I quote, Brigitte Gabriel with Act for America,
Who would know better than she would?
Nobody would, because she fell to their oppressive regimes and they tried to take her life. She said they are attempting to foster an environment of hate, loathing, and resentment towards you, America, Western culture, Jews, Shiites, secular Muslims, and non-Muslims. So this is the magic that the president is talking about today, friends. I go on. Apparently, this Muslim in chief that lives in the White House overlooked his Christian obligation and duty. He swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States with his hand not on the Quran, but on the Christian Bible. The book which declares, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," Exodus 20, verse 3. Acts 4:12, "Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved." By the way, his name is Jesus Christ. Or what about 1 Timothy 2:5? "For there is one God, not two, not three, not four, not 1 million, you Hare Krishnas, and one mediator between God and man. That man, his name is Christ Jesus." It was also Jesus who said that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me. And let me say this to those that oppose what I just got done reading. For it is written, all roads lead to the judgment seat of Christ, like it or not. And in conclusion, if America allows this administration to pick new gods for you, rest assured, friends, there will be war in the gates. Judges 5:8, a war in which I believe this administration intends to incite.
Exactly. And that's when you're talking about this, what I'm thinking about is, okay, I thought the big push in schools today was tolerance. I'm hearing no tolerance of Christians, no tolerance of anyone who has any other belief other than the Muslim belief. So I'm wondering, how are they going to fit that into their agenda?
Well,
of
the
what
homosexuals are doing the same thing.
Exactly. It's like they contradict their very names. When you say this is backed up by freedom from religion or separation of church and state.
That's like saying a fish free from water, a bird free from air. I mean, this is how stupid in backwards, literally stupid means dull, insensible, these people are. And you have to do this. You have to feed that monster to be that stupid. Mm-hmm. Really, you do.
I know. And their names contradict themselves. So we're saying, freedom from separation of church and state. Okay, I thought that the Muslim was a religion. So how are you trying to separate that? Your very name contradicts what you're standing behind that you want to implement in the schools. I mean, it's like saying.
Well, look to Europe. Are the Muslims over there? Are they intolerant towards anybody else? Of course they are. Look at just happened in England. We had a couple Muslims go ahead and strike down one of the military men over in England. Mm-hmm. And then he has the audacity to say, "Well, this is how we kill our animals." I mean, this is how degrading these people are, friends. And I'm talking about radical Islam. And I'm talking about the President of the United States who entertains your sworn enemies in the White House, friends. So what do you have to say about that? 1-866-233-0747. SonsOfLibertyRadio.com. Be right back. Do you remember when you were in school and someone yelled fight after school between so-and-so?
The Sons of Liberty.
It would go through the entire school in about 15 minutes.
The Sons of Liberty.
And about 90% of the school population would be there on top of the hill to see who would win the fight. Are you starting to get what I'm saying?
The Sons of Liberty.
It's time to fight the good fight, but you have to get into it first.
The Sons of Liberty.
Okay, so let's answer the objective. You were talking about lines between church and state. Friends, what we're talking about is Obama's administration announced a nationwide Muslim outreach program for children grades K through 12. And then you had actually brought up, what about lines between church and state? We've diffused that 1,000,000 times. We've debunked it 1,000,000 times. Common sense. It's nowhere in any founding document, friends. But I do want to let the Christian children know, the students across this country, the American patriotic Christians in this country, that listen, you have the right to hand out tracts and flyers or other Christian religious materials on school campus. You've never lost the right. Students have the right to do research papers, speeches, so on and so forth, with Christian themes. You've never lost the right. Students have the right to be exempt from participating in assignments that are contrary to their religious beliefs. And by the way, there is no enmity between us and the Muslim religion, America. because all are afforded religious liberties in America. But we're all still ruled by that same Mosaic institution, the God of Jesus Christ our Lord. You understand? The only time that you run into, well, I don't want to say odds, but the only time that you run into, I want to use the word warfare, is when you have a people that become radical for their religion to the point where they want to kill those that don't believe.
Can I say
the way that they believe? That is a jihad. And this is what they're attempting to teach your kids in public schools.
I think I got a good analogy to that. It's kind of like this. You have a house. It's your house. You built the house. It's your house, kind of like America. You can have guests come in your house. But when your guests come in your house, they listen to the rules of your house. You've got certain things that you do and do not do in your house.
That's right.
When the guest comes to your house as a guest, that's fine, as long as he's under the rules that you have placed in your household.
That's right.
When that guest tries to take over your household and kick you out of your own house or establish their own rules within your house, that's when you have to say, no, this is my house.
That's right.
These are the established rules.
That's exactly what we're running into in this country with radical Muslims.
Right.
I want to also let the American people know, again, talking about lines between church and state, rewind just a little bit. Despite the fact that we have rights, it amazes me how much the people spend proclaiming defeat and giving power over to corruption when they still have the freedom to do the right things. Friends, you've never lost the rights. You've been scared out of your rights. And you've been scared out of your rights through organizations such as the ACLU. Friends, I can go on and on and on. Paper study projects, you've never lost the right. Religious holidays. Christmas is not an issue in this country. Neither are displays of the nativity scene. Rules and discipline according to Scripture. Equal access according to law. Folks, you've never lost the right. It's really that simple. Now what?
Yeah, it's like all this.
Now what?
You know,
I mean, if you have the right to do the right thing and you still have the power to do the right thing and right the wrongs, then right the wrongs rather than complaining about the wrongs that you're responsible to right.
Yeah, it's interesting too because, if you think about it, you never lost the right. I'm thinking of the Wizard of Oz. Everyone was so scared of that big old wizard, all the smoke, and all he could do was stand behind his little what do you want to call it? Little gates, wherever he was standing. All he could
his
do
little hideout.
His little hideout. All he could do is stand behind and push buttons and throw out smoke and make his face real big and project it like it was huge and, make all this noise and be loud and scare everyone to death. And you talk about this all the time. And then Toto, the little dog, comes around and pulls open and back that curtain to say, hey, this little guy, we've been afraid of this little guy.
Well, and that little guy you're talking about is the state-run media who America says
makes this big
proclaim
monster
that they don't believe in what they say. I got to make one more point. 35-year-old Paul Horner, a teacher at Starks Elementary School in Louisiana, down south, folks, told a news outlet that he is excited about the new program. He said, I think anything a child can learn is good. We need more learning in this country, Horner said. I'm sorry. These classes are not... friends, I'm just going to go to the bottom of it. The Muslim Youth Outreach Program is designed to help young people from different cultures work together to break down ethnic barriers. If that's what it was about, cool. But that's not what it's about, folks. Look at in foreign countries today. The Muslims come in, they infiltrate through the Trojan horse, they begin to overtake and then overthrow. And then what happens? They begin to kill opposition. But let me go on. This individual that called president, this is what he said. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, Khalid Matil. He said, I spoke with President Obama by telephone yesterday and personally thanked him for what he is doing for the Muslim community. Now, friends, this individual that thanked President Barack Hussein Obama is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party. Just thought I would tell you that. And they even have a phone number on here if you'd like to be a part or a volunteer to help out the Muslim religion and their indoctrination illegally into the public schools in America. You can just go ahead and give them a call.
Just a common sense question. I know we've been over this a million times, but this is our quote unquote Christian president. Don't you think that if he was this Christian president, he would spend a majority of his time promoting Christ? I mean, you think?
No, he's been warring against who we are, but he's also the guy that said he wanted to fundamentally transform America.
That's
that
right.
means foundationally. So that's where we're at today, and it's a reality. So we need to deal with the reality. But I'd like to come back to the point that where the American people are throwing their hands up in the air, friends. I want to tell you again, and here's the hope. I'm going to give you the truth, and how you respond to that truth is where the hope lies. Do all that you can do and leave the results up to God, said John Quincy Adams. Now, I want you to understand this. This is just the beginning. And I've been saying it's just the beginning for 3 years, friends, because it is. And I also want you to pay attention one more time to what the Muslims are, whose coattails are they riding? They are riding the radical Muslims, friends. There's just no getting away from it. The apple does not fall too far from the tree. It's the same methodology. It's the same ideology. But the radical homosexuals just do not realize that it's the Muslims, the radical Muslims, that are calling for their execution. So they're opening the door for their own
demise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I like that. I start it, you finish it.
That's what I'm here for.
So here we are, friends. We're in the middle of it, and you can see how excited people are about actually standing up and fighting for their nation. Again, we need to learn to shut the TV off, and the best that we have, friends, they're not talking about these issues. They're not talking about the younger generation. They're sitting there playing the referee between the left and the right. They're playing the referee between the Democrats and the Republicans, when in fact, friends, there is no difference. Pay attention. Jesus said, judge a man by his fruit, not by what he says. Just read the book of Luke, finished it up yesterday. Isn't it interesting how many times when the apostles asked them, what are the signs? The first thing Jesus said is, take heed and be not deceived, because many will come in my name. They will say that they're Christians, but they're not Christians at all.
Exactly. And that's what the Lord said.
2 Corinthians 11
you
as
know
well.
a man by his fruit. You judge a man by the fruit. It's very obvious to see. You can tell someone you love them all day long, but unless you show them that you love them, there's no difference.
But this president's already showing the people who he loves.
That's
and it's
exactly
not the
my
American
point.
people, it's the Muslim people. And the Muslim people are the sworn enemies of the American people. And again, I'm talking about the Muslim Brotherhood and the radical Muslims.
That's exactly right. Well, that's my point. My point is he can say he's a Christian all day long. What's the fruit of his life? What do his actions prove? That he is not Christ-like. He is indeed not a Christian. When you're promoting the Muslim religion and you're not promoting Christ, it doesn't take a bit of common sense to figure out what this man is all about. And it's not like we've just had one clue. We've seen it over and over, as you mentioned, through Benghazi and through all these different things that we've been through as a nation, and the things that the people have let go. Or, what happens is people will rise up for a little bit about, the healthcare, and then they just settle down, they go back to normal, and then they get upset about this, and then they get,
Let's give credit to where credit is due. There's been a lot of, Stephanie, we've seen a lot of people across the country, and namely it's been women that have stood up to the challenge that's before the American people today. So we are seeing a lot of people, again, friends, the state-run media is not talking about these people, but you know them as the Tea Party. And again, if this administration was not threatened by the Tea Party, why did they spend so much time trying to demean and demoralize, and not only demoralize, but also demonize and polarize the Tea Party? Because they are afraid of them. Here's the remedy. Abraham Lincoln said this. Who would know better than him, friends? We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress, those that represent we the people, friends, and the courts. Not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. This is beyond, folks, this isn't a violation of law. This is a transgression of law. That's what we're talking about today. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution, friends. There's nothing lawful about this administration. They're attempting to get away with whatever the American people let them get away with. And what you let them get away with is exactly what they're going to continuously do. So, America, it is time to stand up again. And I'm going to end this show every time with the same thing. Friends, we have a responsibility. And our responsibility, we have an obligation, and we have a duty to stand up and fight for what hundreds and thousands of men fought, bled, and died to give us. And what did they do? They ratified the Constitution of the United States, the laws of our God-given republic. Okay? We are an empire of laws, not opinions. John Adams actually said that. He was the second president of the United States. It really gets simpler and simpler as we dig in deep for the treasure that we seek to find, namely knowledge, to understand what our forefathers gave us. And you need to keep in mind, with our forefathers, friends, they threw off a tyrant. Who knew better than they as to what we're dealing with today? We need to go back and learn from history, namely our forefathers, and deal with it in such a manner as they did. Folks, you got Bradley and Stephanie Joy, sonsoflibertyradio.com, 1 John 3:18. Love you by what we do. Talk to you in 23.